I'm excited to have you. It's my first time in the studio having a general contractor sit down with me, and you happen to be a Navy guy. So
perfect. It makes it great.
Yeah, so why don't you do me a favor, introduce yourself, Andy, to anybody that doesn't know you.
Yeah, Andy Kirby with DPR, the Central Region Advanced Tech Lead. So for us, that means throughout Texas up to Colorado, oversee all of our data center projects, as well as some of our what we call, like semiconductor type projects. So that all kind of rolls up with me.
Nice. How long have you been at DPR?
Almost 7 years, and so it's been a fun ride. And I'll tell a little secret, and I'm just going to be a little vulnerable here. But before I joined DPR, I'd never touched a data center before. Yeah. And so I guess I'm quote new to the industry. But I've heard you say a couple of times like it doesn't matter anymore because it's changing so much.
It really doesn't. I'd like to get your input on that too, because if you just started 7 years ago, and DPR has probably been building. DPR is, for those that don't know, one of the biggest general contractors in this game. And I don't know how many projects I've been on with DPR, right? And that means they do more than their fair share of the market on data center construction. There's other big players out there, but there's not a lot of big players that have as big of a resume, right? So coming from, you guys are headquartered in Northern California, right?
Yeah, and we've kind of dispersed models. So our management, we call leadership team, is really made up of regional leaders throughout the country. And
how many you guys have? Three?
We have five.
Who leads the whole group now?
So it's Mark Whitson, and he's actually out of North Carolina. So it's really, our accounting's out of Florida. And so, yes, we did start in the Bay Area, in Redwood City, but have grown since then. To your point, it's been
with
clients.
The industry.
That's right.
The industry went. People, I think, were so comfortable with what you guys were able to do for them on the West Coast that when they go to new merchant markets, they wanted something consistent that they remembered. And it seems as though DPR has a pretty strong record. I've done a lot of work with DPR east of Texas as well, but a lot of it between Texas and the West Coast. So, but let's start from the beginning, because did you go to the academy? I see the ring.
I did. I put it on today just for you. I don't wear it most days.
Nice ring.
I'm just afraid I'll lose it, and so I just keep it in the drawer. Honestly, I have to dust it off.
So, give us the Cliff Notes version. Walk us through the horn. How did you get to the academy? Where are you originally from, and why did you go there?
Yeah, pretty cool. Grew up in Georgia, and went to high school there, and got recruited for football to play football at the academy.
Are you guys going to beat Army this year?
Yeah, I'm Skippy. I mean, the records don't mean anything come.
Well, you guys you only had one loss, right? And that was Notre Dame.
We had two, Rice and Notre Dame. We fell apart against Rice. So,
oof. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, West Point hasn't played anybody but a bunch of chumps.
Yeah.
So I have a brother that's class of 96. I hope he's listening.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Yeah. So got to go to the academy for that. I don't think I would have made it in otherwise.
Did you guys win when you were there?
We won 2 out of the 4. So 50%.
Okay.
So it was great to go there. My story kind of changed a little bit. I got hurt playing football, and so had 5 shoulder surgeries while I was there.
Go reserves then instead?
Yeah. So I actually went in active duty afterwards, and so I just didn't get to play football at the academy as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
Graduated, got to was a surface warfare officer, because it was like, hey, you're not good enough for anything else. You can't fly, is what everyone wants to do, but hey, you're good enough to be on a ship. And then transferred into the construction side of in the Navy a couple years later. And so spent 8 years active duty, got off active duty, went to commercial construction doing kind of like healthcare type of stuff. And really, go ahead.
What were you doing? Okay, so like, why did you want to get into construction? Because you already was introduced to construction in the military?
Yeah, so it was just something I kind of wanted to do. Thinking back in high school, I actually did an internship for a concrete company and doing blueprints. So I was back in the back room making copies of the vellum, and did some like form work and just as a laborer. I was a high school kid, so they paid you $4 an hour just to get out of here. And so that kind of spurned a little bit of that. I just being clear, I wasn't smart enough to do it out of the academy, and so had to kind of work through that.
People don't realize the academy is just as hard to get into as any Ivy League school, and the only difference is that if you go to the academy, you have to have a core curriculum engineering base.
That's right.
So like, you could say you're stupid, but anybody at the academy went through a lot of attrition and a lot of competition to get there. So there's no stupid people at that school, right? There just to be some shitty leaders maybe, but not stupid people. So keep going though. So you saying, hey man, I wasn't smart enough, but the reality is you kind of had an interest in it, and there's something about being in that environment, was it? That like being around the drawings and being around the construction trailers, or?
That's right, and just trying to understand that piece of it. And so I put in my package for a lateral transfer from the surface warfare community to the
Is that hard?
It was, because you have to meet meet certain requirements ahead of that, get your surface warfare pin and things like that. And then you have to actually be a good sailor at that point. And so you put in the package, and no CO is super excited about you transferring out of their community.
Exactly. Because the entire Navy's basis is managing the oceans.
That's
and
right.
You're like, you want to leave that to go on land and build shit?
Right.
So that's counterintuitive. So that is probably not common. I'm guessing not a lot of people leave in SWO life.
It's not. It's not. There's very few each year that do it, one or two. It's not
when
a lot.
You came out, you're like, naturally, I'm going to work for a general contractor.
That's
you
right.
were stationed on the West Coast?
I was in San Diego, so it was a great place. So did a lot of construction in San Diego. I did get deployed to Africa, and then as well as Iraq and Kuwait, and built some hospitals there, part of the Navy.
Sure.
That was really cool.
The construction battalion, I guess?
That's correct.
The CBs?
Yeah, so that was really neat to be able to see that. It was a world experience, places you don't typically want to go, but you get to go, and you get paid for. And so that really changed how I wanted to be in like construction, and understanding that piece of it when I got off active duty. And then went to go work for kind of a general contractor. And it was interesting because I was more of the owner's rep for the Navy, and then going to work for a general contractor. A lot of appreciation for general contractors on that side, because
completely different game.
It is. And like, you're writing the contracts versus holding the general
Managing
contractor.
them.
Yes.
Yeah. It's different. I think that it's a tough game right now. A lot would argue that the GC is the most vulnerable part, where they could hang the GCs and fees around your neck. The trades may not change, but it's kind of like in the military units. Sometimes, like I was with a group last week. Rosen hosted this incredible event at Prairie Fire out in Las Vegas.
I heard about that. Yeah,
it was incredible. You missed it. Yeah, you had the grouse. You had the Battle of Mogadishu in '93. You had the ground force commander for Delta that was there. He retired as a 4-star. It turns out he was also the last American to leave Afghanistan as the command, plus he had the flag, right? So, but he had other people that were following him, 2 stars, and a whole plethora of guys. And I was talking to some of these special operation forces guys, and they're like, look, I've spent 17 years working with 2 12-man teams. That's it. Our enlisted ranks, which are 85% of the fleet, never changed, but the officers always did every few years. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So like, what you see is sometimes the trades or the blue collar work, the hands-on labor will stay in a place, and you'll see the leadership rotate in and out. And we see that happen in the military.
That's right.
At that scale, but we see that happen in the civilian community as well. It's something that you probably were used to and understood. There's always an attrition cycle that happens, right?
That's right. Yeah.
People are cycling in and out of those types of units. But when you got to your unit, when you got to this general contractor, were they building data centers or?
No, so it was not as complicated work. It was hospitals and some of that type of work.
Some of those are complicated.
They are, so I would say I got to do some hospital work and then life science work, which is
way
complicated.
More advanced.
Yeah. So that's where felt that I was pretty qualified for trying to do some more of the complicated side of the work. And really back to your point about the craft workers, for my time in the Navy working with the CBs, you have the craft workers there, and to your point, they're enlisted, and so it's really taking care of your people. I learned early on.
That's what GC's job is, to take care of the troops.
100%. So that's how I relate it in my own mind, is like the craft workers are the CBs that you got to really take care of, and they're the ones who are building it, right?
They're bringing it to life. It's our vision, our
that's right.
Strategy, our budgets, our schedules sometimes, but they're the force that are doing it, right? So, but you learn that stuff in the military. What I'm trying to do is, you'll see me painting with broad strokes to talk about more of the obsolescence of college, not to trivialize your awesome degree. But I do think that you don't have to have a college degree to have the ability to make an impact in an industry as kinetic as ours.
I 100% agree. I mean, I feel like that there's been more of a push for people to go into the craft work because it's a trade that, and it's something I look at as like, I don't have a skill. I can push paper like nobody's business, but to actually build something, like I don't have that skill of like, I'm not that skilled with a hammer. I mean, I kind of put nails in the wall. Sure. Will it be straight? Maybe. And so to be able to take that craft, that skill, and really hone that in your craftsman for the rest of your life, I think is really awesome. Something that you have pride in.
I think that I say these things again, because I'm always going to be drawing parallels back. Yeah. I do think that your time in the military gave you an advantage to transition into the civilian community to build anything, knowing that there was a hierarchy in which you had a responsibility in that role as a leadership. And general contractors are prime contractors. They're, in most cases, the one throat to choke for the customer in most cases.
That's right.
So they have to play both ends against the middle. They got to take care of the troops, and you got to complete the mission and the morale, right?
That's right.
I think I say this because there's this podcast will reach soldiers, sailors, and airmen at bases throughout the world, not just, outside of Austin. And they should know, hey, no matter what you did in the military, if you come out and you understand that hierarchy, general contractors are looking for those types of leaders because you can't find we need people that could use their hands.
That's right.
But we also need people that can inspire them, make them feel safe, and allow them to be fulfilled by what they're doing. And those leaders typically are in an incubator, sometimes in the military.
That's right. And I think, so back to my story real quick about when I came to DPR, I was hired as the life science guy for Dallas. And they were like, well, we don't have that work right now, but we got this pretty cool meta job over here.
Oh, wow.
Could you go run that campus? I'm like, sure. It's leading people. Back to your point of I'm like, I don't know anything about data centers, but I know about leading people, and so that helped me. And it was a great team. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they were already a couple buildings into a 6-building campus, and they were well-oiled machine, but it was pretty cool to come in and learn from that team.
It's the perfect machine to plug into first off, because it's not cookie cutter, but it's iterative.
That's right, iterative. Yeah.
But the means and methods are really mature.
Yes,
DPR has a very proven. People don't realize how old that company is. How old is that company?
We're 34 years, yeah.
So they've been doing it since the beginning of this industry.
That's right.
This industry, many will argue, would started in 1994 when Amazon.com went for. But let's just say it happened in the beginning of the third industrial revolution, or the end of the third and the beginning of the fourth, which was right at the dot-com bust, right? So you guys have been building these things since the dot-com boom for everybody. So you guys have very proven methods is what I'm saying. So you came in with your proven methods of leadership to their proven methods, and you went into a homogenous environment that was able to be an incubator for training for you, it sounds like.
That's right. And so it was really cool to, utilize my leadership skills, and because it's a big team. Just for DPR, it was about 140 people on site, plus our craft. We do self-perform work. And so we had another probably 200 people on craft side of that doing different concrete and other works. And so it was really a challenge because the biggest thing was keeping people happy. It wasn't really building. It was keeping people happy and moving forward and showing the vision. Yeah, and getting a shared vision so that people were pushing in the right direction to complete the mission, as you say.
So, hey man, we hired you for life science, but instead we're going to go do these things called data centers, which I would argue are more complicated, right? And at least the volume and velocity and the speed that we have to move at has to be more. That's
faster. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you find yourself, in this situation? How did you like data centers, and how did that lead to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I find myself as I'm a technical person, but sometimes I was just that's not something I'm interested in. But being out there after a year, 2 years, I was out there for 3 years. I'm I'm actually becoming an expert in this, because I was a little, I would say maybe shy away from it because I wasn't like everyone else had been in it forever. To your point, DPR has been doing data centers for a long time, and so I wasn't that expert. And so for me, it was a little scary to get into a new market and be an expert in it. And so, but as you start building, and to your point, seeing different ways of structures, and then being able to help out with other colo providers and help build for them, I thought it was really cool just to see the differences in the way that it was being built, being cooled, being electrified. That was pretty cool. And then now I'm man, I'm kind of an expert. Not really, but I understand it now. I can speak to somebody about it. So
big shops like yours have the ability to sit front row at some of the largest programs in the world, right?
Yep.
In fact, if I'm not mistaken, are you guys the GC in Abilene right now?
Possibly.
All right. Well, that would make you the GC on the largest data center project ever being built in the world, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for growth and scale at these things.
Yeah.
At what point, did you understand that you felt comfortable in this staying, because now it sounds like you're only focused on this.
That's correct. Yeah. And so we started to get some life science work, and ended up kind of passing off and figuring out a kind of a passion around it. We had some leadership changes, and people moved on or what have you. And so it left me to be in charge of the data center world. And after that point, I'd done now 5 or 6 data centers, and I was I think I'm comfortable around this. I think I can lead people in it, because to your point, the leadership connected with the knowledge was pretty cool. Then I feel hey, this is a pretty powerful case for me to lead this group. And we do a lot of data center work here up in Dallas and Austin. And so it really gave me the platform to maybe push us forward to do more work. And to your point, I may have not gone out to Abilene a couple weeks ago and seen that project, and it's awesome. And we are doing that work out there, and there's been some articles on it. They just did their.
There's been articles on it.
Yeah, and they just did their, I guess, topping out, even though we're still going. And it's really cool to see just that scale of projects, and to see that growth. And to your point, the liquid cooled. That's awesome. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
what are you seeing as for how many years you've been looking at data centers? Because I always tell people, look, it's really important for a group like a GC to have there is massive advantages to experience in some cases.
Sure.
Scaling a general contractor as an example, that's really, really important, having a lot of consistency, but understanding that the ways that we build data centers today aren't the same as what we were doing 3 years ago.
That's right.
And in 3 years from now, it's not going to even be close to the same. In fact, the product that we're building is way different now. Would you agree?
100% agree.
So, but to that end, what do you do to stay at the tip of your spear, the top of your game, to understand what you have to do from a construction perspective? And what are you doing as an individual for professionally understanding the industry well and understanding where the puck is going?
Yeah, I'm super excited about that question because I try to research as much as I can about the liquid chip cooled or even the back of the rack and how that looks, the technical piping and how it flows, and then the overall capacity of the buildings. And so, one, I think it's talking to some of the designers that are designing these, and talk to architects, MEP designers, and our trade partners. They are the ones building it. And so maybe DPR isn't doing one here or in a certain location, but our trade partners are doing it elsewhere. And so I get really excited about kind of nerding out of figuring out like, what does that look like for entropy and enthalpy, and how that the heat transfer across all of that actually did decent in thermodynamics. And so I kind of understand it. And so I enjoy the newest wave of how we build. And it's interesting because our clients are wanting us to build faster, more complicated,
safer,
and higher quality. Yeah. But yet the same amount of time or less, right? And just the fact of like cheaper. And cheaper. Sorry, I should have put that up.
Not even happening, right?
Yeah. But commissioning for liquid cooled is a lot different than commissioning for a typical air cooled data center. And so I think we're trying to figure out the best methods of doing that. And
everybody is right now. There's not a lot. I mean, look, there's not a lot of people that have had to go through that yet.
Not yet.
The first ones to the wall are always the bloodiest, right? So
that's right.
You have to have almost a really strong entrepreneur spirit to try to be the beta, tester of those methods, because I'm doing the same thing. We're helping, we're getting really involved in water-cooled load banks and programs associated with those things. And because of that, I have to become an expert on water-cooled load banks too.
Right.
I was reading specs this morning. So going back to all those things, what is it that you and DPR have to do? Like, what are some of the challenges that you face as you guys grow, as you're seeing this industry grow and you guys are growing with it? Mm-hmm. Is it labor? I mean, what are you doing? Is it retention? Is it recruiting or retention? Is it training and developing? What is the challenge and what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I think so. It's a multi-part answer, I think, on that one. Going back to a little bit of continue the training to keep people abreast of the latest technologies. Matter of fact, we just went through a course, and I'm not advocating for anything or a commercial, but it's certified data center professional, just to try to say, hey, let's get taught.
Get knowledgeable.
Let's get knowledgeable. And I think more so than the training being provided, although it was good, it was the discussion we had 8 people on different teams that took a 2-day training and talking about the latest technologies and the difference of the build. So I think that needs to continue.
Investing in that is important. I think that some people should always be trying to do that. It's not I thought it was I don't have one of those. I was led to believe at first that they weren't that challenging. And then I met a few guys on our team that went out and got them. They're like, listen, dude, that test was real. I had to study. I had to pay attention.
Yeah, I had to pay attention for sure.
Yeah. So there's a lot of complicated stuff that takes place in this game. So they don't just hand those out.
That's right. Right.
But investing in your people to go get that, what do people have to do? Is there a certain level or rank they have to reach before they get invested into like that?
Yeah. So it was kind of a test for us at DPR to take on this. And we talked about it with our advanced tech group just yesterday of like, does it make sense and who does it make sense for? And we figured out like, it's probably more if someone who's built 2 or 3 of them. If you've only built one, you're not going to understand kind of what the guy is going to be like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah.
Sure.
And so I think it's somebody that is in field and office, a superintendent or a project manager that has built a couple of them could contribute and or understand what's being taught. And again, I thought the biggest discussion was between the superintendent and the PMs and project executive talking through like how things are built, and we were drawing on the walls about different mechanical systems, cooling systems, and that discussion, even air cooled, water cooled. What does it look like? Was awesome discussion that I think everyone walked away from that. It was like I learned a lot, in these 2 days. It was a lot, 2 8-hour days. But so I think, in answer your question, I think that the training, you got to continue that training. So that's a piece of it. And then a big piece of it is our workforce. And I mentioned we do self-perform. So we're trying to manage that piece of it of having self-perform by having our own trades. We have almost 6,000 tradesmen throughout the United States. And so it's awesome to try to keep training them as well on the better techniques and methods so that we can be safer, more cost-effective quality for our owners. And that's more on the, concrete drywall hack type installations, waterproofing. But
are those a lot of the trades that you're self-performing?
That's
any
correct.
Carpentry work? Or?
Carpentry, we'll do like miscellaneous carpentry, whatnot. But yeah, most of our carpenters, are the concrete guys doing form work and things like that.
How are you recruiting? How does DPR before I get to what you're doing from a strategic scalability perspective on labor, because labor is the existential threat to the space. So some will argue it's power first, but without the right people, we don't have power anyway. So you could have the greatest design on earth with regards to power. If you don't have the labor force that's trained and capable of bringing it to life, your design and your idea is shit.
Yeah.
Right. So what is it that DPR, because at every altitude and airspeed, I could talk to engineers. I mean, I could talk to people on the development side and ask them what are some of the trends they see from, where everyone's going out to find larger masses of land, but it has to have capacity back to natural gas. They're less worried about latency to connectivity as an example. In the second phase, you have the design phase, and we're seeing a lot of people, the trends are 450 watts per square foot and growing. And, the designs are, they are what they are. And the biggest pivot right now we're seeing is, whether or not we're going to give distribution out at a medium voltage level, or if we're going to go to, direct liquid chip, or if we're, what the mechanical permutation looks like is probably where most of the juice is at right now in evolution. Would you agree?
Yes.
But the means and methods, what are on the build side? The phase 3 is the build delivery side. That's the most kinetic side. About 80 to 84 cents for every dollar spent in this industry is spent on that third phase, right? And that's the acquisition of the equipment, the VMI or OFCI strategy, as well as the implementation and delivery and installation of it. What are you seeing from an industry shift right now? Because I just spent last week with the Rosen team, and I'm getting all the, the trends that they see, and they are, they'll have probably 10,000 FTEs before the end of this year. Yeah. So they're seeing a lot of work too. Right. So they're telling us what they see, like how hard is it what are you seeing from any form of trend, and from a GC's perspective, and paint with a broad stroke?
Yeah, I would say in talking with the Rosen guys, I was chatting with them, I think the previous week to you, and they're always, espousing like we don't have enough workforce. We don't have enough workforce. We got to get more people in the trades, and I appreciate them doing that. I really do, because I think they're a big proponent of trying to get people out there working. And so I think obviously that's a piece of it, is like, what are we going to do to train our workforce? And so something DPR is trying to do is we go out to high schools and try to do internships, and even at high school level of getting people to a general contractor, and whether it's like, and we give them say, hey, like, it doesn't have to be a PM route, doesn't have to be a super route, it can be a craft route. Like, come work with us and figure out the construction industry. We're trying to make construction sexy, so people in high school are saying like, yeah, I don't want to be a ditch digger. You're like, well, okay, sure, don't be a ditch digger. Yeah, be an electrician, be a mechanical guy. I mean, these are highly paid. Be a crane operator, for God's sakes. I mean,
yeah, I'll tell you, I like all those things. We all started from somewhere, right? So we just had to get in the game, and then we could figure out once we're on the field, maybe I should play the front field or the back field, or maybe I'm the infield or outfield or whatever it is. We try to hire transitioning veterans and place them into QA/QC roles.
That's great.
Or safety roles, because safety is the number one KPI. Quality, as you said, was up there. If I can put them in an environment that they're being exposed to the safety and the QA standards of the world, they're learning the lexicon of the industry, and they're learning the difference between an ATS and a PDU and an EIEIO. And once they immerse themselves long enough, and they get to see where the real, like, I'm not saying where the meat on the bone is, but project managers that are held to a deadline, that have date-related motivation with liquidated damages, or you have a budget in which, like, you can't just build these things safely and on time. They got to stay within budget, right? If you miss that third bucket, you almost don't finish the mission, right? So zero failure is what really comes with these programs. So we have to operate like we did in the military, where when's the last time you guys been able to fail in any program?
Yeah, never.
Yeah.
Right.
Failure is just not acceptable.
It's not an option, yeah.
So we have to grow through these things. And what I'm seeing is we have to figure out what we're doing with these. Like, I was with a group the other day that said, to hire 300 FTEs, so they're, trade.
Yeah.
They'll go through at least 1,000 people.
Wow.
It takes 1,000 hires to wring out 300 people. And what I'm saying is, how do I create a technology incubator for labor to where they could come in and we could put them in a different position to where they're not ditch diggers, but there's a need for that too.
There is.
But the reality is they kind of got to sit in a construction trailer and understand what a PM looks like, what an APM looks like, what the project engineer looks like, what is the project, and they go through the whole list.
The superintendent and what's in the field, the craft.
Look, the supers are the only people that taught me shit.
That's right.
The supers and the
Same
foreman.
here. That's why I look at it as a chief. It was my superintendent.
Exactly.
Was like,
They're
he's the one
seniors.
that's training me,
The general supers and the general, like those are the people that, when we hire people and put them when I worked for a GC, we were like, they're not allowed in the trailer before 3 p.m. They have to be with the foreman and the supers all day, because that's where the glazer is going to explain to you chapter and verse.
That's right.
Yeah. Concrete steel guy is going to read, but you have to be immersed in it to learn.
Yes, agreed.
And the challenge is trying to figure out what that magic number is to get to 100 people, how many people you have to hire, knowing that you're going to blow through some. And now it's not just knowing that there's an attrition number to that, but maybe we have to figure out a better breadcrumbs or a roadmap to get them into like a better rampway to get them into PMs. Because when you talk to people, I imagine even DPR, when they hire, they're like, we want people with experience. And if they have data center experience, even better. We're running out of those people.
We are, yeah.
So we're going to have to start building more of those humans.
That's right.
So what do you guys?
They're smart. They look smart. They come across as smart. Let's maybe try them out. And maybe they don't have the data center experience, but maybe a wish to be in a technical background. Maybe they come from, microprocessors. Yeah, that's very technical and somewhat similar, especially with the process piping, or even in healthcare, like we talked about earlier. I think just even there, but also like, hey, maybe it's just a smart kid out of college or out of high school that is wanting to get into the industry. Let's take the opportunity to train them. Do they have the passion? Do they want to learn? Because you can teach them skills. You can't teach them passion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a big fan of, I think there's 4 groups to hire from, and I don't include high school. It sounds like you guys recruit high school.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're too volatile at that age to understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, so obviously college is the first one that everyone goes to, but I do believe in the obsolescence of college now.
Yeah.
I spoke at a conference here in September in which, I mean, if people don't like this information, they could take it up with AI, but I chat GPT these questions, and 1 out of 4 kids in America on average graduate from college with a degree that's already been made obsolete from technology, and 2 universities in the United States per minute begin ripping out and replacing all their curriculum because it's either outdated or the vehicles that they're teaching through are outdated in terms of technology. So what you're learning your freshman year is obsolete by many cases by the time you graduate your senior year. So I do believe college does offer some degrees regarding engineering and, construction. There are a lot of value that you can get out of that. Some of these degrees are absolutely worthless, unless you're going to go be a teacher and,
sure.
You know what I'm saying? You pay $400,000 to get a degree to go be a teacher making $70,000 a year. My thing is there's the military, which is the home of the most advanced weapons, machinery, and technology on this earth.
That's right, yeah.
And you were able to demonstrate that you could cross range from a surface warfare officer over right into construction and make a difference in the construction battalion, right? So like that is the passion part that you're talking about, because immersion is how you learn your skill set, right?
That's right.
I think that third set is the trades, right? But there's such a huge demand for the trades right now that you're going to have a hard time pulling from them.
That's right.
There's so much opportunity for growth in the trades that we're not going to be able to recruit a lot from them. So we're looking at colleges, we're looking at the military, and we also look at first responders.
Oh, that's great. I hadn't really thought about the first responder piece of that.
Think about a firefighter or a paramedic that has the ability to show up on scene in a life and death situation, their emotional ranges. They can think through catastrophic challenges in a way that's more objective and less emotional than their average trained person, because that's what they're conditioned and trained to.
Sure.
So like, if you can't get someone who has the knowledge to navigate confidently through a really complicated challenge or situation, then you need someone emotionally capable of doing that so they can slow the ship up and get the right people involved.
That's right.
Paramedics and EMS and first responders, people that are running into burning buildings or running in harm's way, they tend to be the best ones in project management. A couple of my co-founders are bullet sponges from the Army, right? They were infantrymen. And I hired them as PMs at a GC a long time ago, knowing that, like, when things go wrong in a construction site, and almost every day something does. That's the beauty about the kinetic energy of a data center. No 2 days are ever the same. And the operation and delivery of the product. And I think it gives you, if you have that pressure testing, you have an advantage, right? So there's only 4 categories we can hire from: college, which those things are great, but that doesn't tell you that they have passion. It tells you that their parents paid for them to go to college for 4 years and party, and now they got to go do something, right? So I do think the trades, the military, and the first responders are the places we're going to have to draw from. But how do we recruit them, and then how do we develop them? You know, what are GCs doing about that? I know what owners reps are doing about it.
So for the training piece of it, even starting with our craft, we have an apprenticeship program internally to DPR that we try to put people through to, again, gauge their passion, to get them to move up through the trades. And even through the trades, just like you mentioned, like we're looking at foremen or general foremen and trying to get them to be what we call field engineers and move up and to be more in the field management. And something that I think is pretty cool about DPR is, like, if you come in as a field engineer, whether it's from the field or not, and you say, hey, I think I want to go the PM route, we're like, yeah, great, we'll train you. And I think that even same thing on the PE route. We've had a lot of guys that and gals that went to college and were like, hey, I want to be a PE for a little bit. And then they say, you know what, I actually want to go on the field side. Great, fantastic. We need more field leaders. And so we encourage that. Hopefully sooner you figure it out.
But DPR is big enough they can absorb that cushion for the training.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. I think that people get the opportunity to figure out what their passion is, and because nothing worse than getting stuck like, hey, I want to really be a PM, but this is all I've ever done, so that's all I'm going to do. And so we try to give people opportunities to look at different roles.
Sure. All right. Well, that's cool. So what else are you seeing as a GC in this space, in this industry? Not just this market. I mean, this market is on fire. Texas is on fire. Texas will be the home for AI.
Yes, it is.
Just like Virginia is the home for cloud, right? I mean, there's cloud everywhere, but Virginia's the home.
Yeah. And
I think AI will be, their home will be in Texas, just because of the way that we have access to more energy and power, right?
I think so. Yeah, and you're asking maybe about the market. I think a concern that people have is you're looking at all this work that is in Texas that is AI related and is data centers, but what about all the other market sectors that are still going on out there?
There's a lot of manufacturing coming back.
That's
too,
right. A lot of manufacturing. At some point,
the CHIPS Act.
That CHIPS Act is going to help. And we've already seen a growth of that.
Hell yeah.
Down in Austin, up in Sherman, north of Dallas. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's putting a further damper on the number of labor hours, the people that are out there, and equipment. And so it's really stressing the market. And then commercial is going to come back eventually. I mean, it's cyclical, and it's going to come back. And it's like, well, where'd all those commercial builders go? Well, they probably went to go build a data center or something.
Yeah, that's what everyone's trying to do right now.
Right?
Everyone that has the ability, industrial, commercial.
Yeah.
Who has hundreds of millions of dollars of top line that they could recognize and reference. I mean, that's a pretty big company, but they just don't do data centers. And I think that there is this thing that says, hey man, you have to have this. But the reality is you just have to have a critical questioning attitude, like culturally, like the passion that you're talking about. Because I mean, it sounds like you were doing life sciences, and next thing you know, you're working on one of the largest data center campuses in the world, right? And you didn't have to have a PhD in data centers. You just had to know how to emotionally navigate through those situations to where when you had to slow down and ask the right people, you could bring them in.
That's right. And we just a downturn here in the Texas market of some of the commercial markets, just not as, we build a lot of JW Marriotts and hotels and high-rise office buildings, but that is slowed. And so we've been able to actually take some of those builders and move them over to the data center side and pair them up with somebody who's done a data center, and they're doing fantastic. Because guess what? A building's a building. What you put in it may be a little bit different. But as far as like the procedures and the processes, to your point, like if you understand construction, like you get a set of blueprints, like you're going to be able to build it. It'll be okay at the end of the day. But we don't send them out there by themselves and say, good luck. We pair them up with folks. And we also have MEP coordinators that are basically seasoned superintendents that are really familiar with the MEP systems and help with clash detection and things like that. And so they're on our projects as well. And I think that's kind of maybe a little bit of differentiator for DPRs. Every one of our data center projects has an MEP coordinator that's their full-time job, is like level 2, level 3, level 4s and commissioning.
So tell people what an MEP coordinator is, because they may be one of the they have the ability to move the needle in the greatest way in critical path, right? If you have a good
100%.
one, because they're identifying things that are being shipped that are not in line with the as-builts, or they're making sure all the equipment lines up the way it's supposed to be when it's arriving on site, right?
Yeah. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth, but it just from early on, even clash detection from the model to understanding where it's supposed to begin. We've kind of gotten away as industry of doing factory witness tests, which I think we need to get back to. But if we have to assume that the factory has something to witness and test, but I think that's an early indicator of whether your stuff's going to be ready or not. But doing factory witness tests, and then from there, when it arrives on site, doing a quality control check to make sure that the MEP coordinator knows what it's supposed to look like, because they've been doing it for 20, 25 years, 30 years. And then when it's set in place, making sure it's turning in the right direction. And then from there, it's commissioning and having those commissioning plans set up very early on with scripts and understanding with the owner what their plan is, and working through commissioning well before the equipment even arrives on site.
People don't realize that the greatest risk to the business, to my experience as a GC and as an owner, has been the rework, the unscheduled, unplanned work that happens as a byproduct of having equipment or gear show up that's not right, and then we have to do rework on it. That's where, if you look at most RCAs for an incident that takes place, or a safety incident that takes place on a general construction site, it's because the unscheduled, unplanned work. And that's typically is a byproduct of having equipment that shows up that's not in accordance with the way it was supposed to be in a factory drawing.
That's right.
So the MEP coordinator's job is to drive that risk down to zero as close as they can get, which is really hard, especially on the size of programs that you guys are probably trucking at.
That's right.
To where it's like anything, you could, to the most elite of anything, the submarine community will still let in a dead body every now and then. Even the SF teams do too, right?
Sure, yeah.
So you have to get someone whose only focus is intentionally deliberate to reduce that amount of unscheduled work that happens on a project, because that's where the greatest opportunity of risk is created.
Yeah, and I think that's between checklists and just the knowledge, and then them trying, which is pretty cool. A lot of our MEP coordinators are taking the young PEs and field engineers along the side to show them, like, hey, I want to pass this knowledge on to you, not just take it with me when I retire. And so that's really cool to see that knowledge transfer to people and say, hey, let's go outside, kid, and let's go check out this transformer that we just set and make sure it's set right. And okay, sure, and so I think we got to continue that action of trying to continue to train the people behind you, to train your replacement. Really, is what is we're trying to do.
So along that end, and just to dovetail into that, walk us through, like, right now, for people that don't know who DPR is, if they're in this industry, they probably do. And maybe they're like, well, I'm not on the general construction side, but maybe they have a kid who's either getting ready to graduate high school or is floating in those college years, meaning they're not sure what they're doing. They could be in college, or maybe they're working, somewhere till they figure out what they're going to do, so to speak. Or hopefully maybe you guys are still recruiting and I don't know if you guys hire veterans.
We do. Actually, we have a pretty good veteran program. So
everybody says that. Most GCs are full of shit, though. They like, hey, I have a guy who works here and he's a veteran and he talks to a couple of veterans. But my experience, and I've dealt with a lot of the big shops, is they just want industry veterans. They're not worried about military veterans as much. They want industry veterans. And if they happen to be veterans too, that'd be great, because they all want experience.
Sure.
What I'm saying is, what are you guys doing? What is the career path for someone that's listening? And again, you're not talking to them, because I'm targeting 18 to 24-year-olds. Gen Z is what we target with this podcast. Make no mistake, because they're the future of this industry, and they will outnumber baby boomers in this industry before the end of this year. That's in the next 5 weeks. But what are you doing? Like, help these people that could go coach their kids and go talk to their kids or talk to their nephews or their younger brothers, because they're in this game. Like, listen, if you want to just go build, like, there's unlimited opportunity from the trades to the contracts for the general contractor side.
Yeah.
What would be the message for them to go kind of get it more interested in pursuing an opportunity with DPR? Because how big is DPR?
Yeah, we've got about 11,000 employees worldwide.
So you're probably hiring 1,000 people a year on average.
Somewhere in that range for sure. And we have a pretty robust intern program, which I was talking about, an intern from high school as well as college.
So talk us through it. So these package it up. Let's get some people that are in this space, like, to go out and get family members, because we're the only everybody's here because half the industry got here on accident, like you just explained. Hey, I got here on accident. I was building hospitals, and I was building FAA towers, all these things, and then I was, next thing you know, I was in California building this thing, and I'm like, what's this thing called again?
Right.
And from that point forward, that was all I was building, right? But we didn't intentionally get into this industry. Nobody really does. But now, because we are, let's say we did start in 1994. That's 30 years old. This industry is at a tipping point now where we need to do a better job recruiting for this industry. So recruit for this industry and give these people an understanding of how they can come into DPR and go through a roadmap and one day become you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I'd say start off with let's just take maybe the high school programs. We have we reach out to high schools as far as they can apply to be an intern. And so it was pretty cool. We had a senior that was an intern in high school and then came back as a freshman in college and then a sophomore in college and a junior in college. And so just trying to, back to your career path, is just trying to intern somewhere. This is the advice that I give to kids because I do a little of college recruiting, is like, just go do something over the summer. Don't sit at home and do nothing. Go learn a skill, a trade,
like
or something. Because when I look at resumes and I look, oh, this guy's had 3 internships, this guy did nothing. Or this lady was started her own business and this lady did not. In my mind, that takes precedence over. And so even if it's not in the construction industry, you're trying to figure it out, go do something over the summer. My daughter's at OU and I'm like, you're going to get a job next summer. And then she's a freshman and she knows she's getting a job.
Sure.
And so I think just instilling into people that work ethic is a start. And then from there, if you have a passion around construction and otherwise, like we do recruiting events at most of the major universities. If not, I'll give you my email address, reach out to me because I'd love to mentor people. Back to my daughters at OU, she said, hey, this guy wants a job. I'm like, cool, let's talk to him. So I set up a time, chatted with him and asked him what he wanted to do, what's his passion around and try to get him hooked up with us as an intern. He's just a mechanical engineer. And so for me, it's a passion around getting people to where they want to be and understanding that. And so if you come to me with passion, I'm going to help you. You come to me and like, hey, I need a job because my dad told me, I'm not helping you.
Do they have to go to college? What if they get the internship and they're like, listen, I want to be on this construction thing? And like, honestly, there's a lot of parents out there that are in this industry. I'll have 2 in the SEC and 1 at the Citadel next year, right? So I'm an idiot because I'll be paying for 3 colleges, knowing that the obsolescence of college won't help them build anything but a network.
Sure.
Now they have a ring they can wear and
That's
sit on
right.
the roof for on the weekend.
Yeah.
But most of the shit they'll do will be on the job, right? I mean,
That's right.
And let's be honest, the job that your daughter will have by the time that she graduates hasn't been invented yet either.
Probably.
Right?
Yeah.
Because this industry is going to continue to iterate.
That's right.
So how do we convince people to, hey man, college is great, but you don't have to go that. You could get in this industry. There are plenty of guys I know in this industry that make more money than me and they never once stepped foot on a college campus.
That's right. Yeah. And so part of our internship is we actually rotate people out in the field. It's really pretty fun to see and people's eyes light up about. So it gets them excited about construction. We try to give them an opportunity to learn. We actually do what we call a field day. We have a warehouse in the Dallas area as well as down here in Austin and most of our offices. And we actually do a build day. So all the interns come in and we set up stations for them. So how to figure out just door hardware as a station. Another station is putting up ceiling tile as a station. Another station is how to put up studs, electrical work. So we have, I think it's 9 stations that we work them throughout the day. And they get an interaction of like, hey, I like this. We had a concrete station. They like it, different areas. So they get exposed to it. And then throughout their whole summer, they can go out and like, do you want to pour concrete at 2 a.m.? Let's go. Have at it. And so we really encourage involvement from these kids.
When they graduate, do they have guaranteed jobs or?
It depends how they do. Honestly, it is a trial. And this is what I tell some of the younger PEs that are the mentors, because we assign mentors to some of the people that are coming in to do the internships, is like, are they as good as you? And you need to judge them that way, because we don't want to hire just anybody. We want to hire the best. And so that's where I really challenge people, like, where are they at? Are they as good as you came out of college? But yeah, we're trying to give people, if they're the right person, we're going to give them an offer when they leave that summer for their senior years. And that's where it's gotten to. I remember back in the days, and probably 10, 15 years ago, we did a big conference in the March, April timeframe before graduating December for colleges specifically. And we'd hire people then. Now if you're waiting that long, you're not getting like top tier quality sometimes. Now people fall through the cracks and you still hire awesome people. But you need to have people coming through and probably offer them a job probably like by November, December of their senior year if you want some good quality people. And they come in as superintendents or they come in as project managers. We hire for both. And it's pretty awesome. And then that career path is like, you come start with us and we're going to put you through a training program on the PE route or the field engineer route to help you become better. Because what we want is future PMs and future superintendents that are leaders within our company.
What is like if they, let's say they graduate from high school and they have a degree, maybe it's construction, maybe it's not, but they've interned, they were successful enough. What is an entry-level job for someone like that coming in? Is it a assistant project manager role, or? We
start people as a project engineer on the office side, and then the field side is a field engineer, and then kind of up from there is a senior PE and then a PM, and then on the field side is a senior field engineer, assistant super, and super on that route. And so we give lots of opportunities for people to grow.
Sure.
And we again don't throw people out by themselves. The way we staff jobs, especially on the advanced tech side, is there can be up to 30 people on the job, and so we assign mentors to those folks to help make sure that they are not feeling left out, left behind in a large group. We also have peer groups that we do. So all the project engineers, senior project engineers get together on every 6-week basis to further their learning.
Sure.
And to create that culture within. Same thing with the field side, same thing with the project managers. And so we really try to create connectivity, and part of that's retention, back to your point of hiring's one thing, but retention's another.
What is your greatest challenge right now being what you do? You have a responsibility to have your business ready to work in the most kinetic region in the United States for the largest amount of scale that's going to happen in the next 3 years. What is keeping you up at night?
I think for me, it's really, are we ready for it? Do we have enough people whenever all this work comes? Because we do a lot of repeat work, and I don't want to say no to a client, but I also don't want to fail for a client either. And so people come in the door and say, hey, I got a project starting next week. And you're like, did you just find out about this project?
Sure.
Or did you know about it?
Sometimes it does happen like that.
It sure does.
Right.
And so I think
people's your biggest challenge?
People is, for us it is. It's trying to make sure we retain the right talent, hire the right talent, and just try to keep people moving forward and growing our self-perform
What's
side.
the greatest threat to you on this talent side? Is it recruiting from the other shops?
To some degree it is, but sometimes it's owners hiring some of our people, honestly.
Lou, I have a client that I'm going to have dinner with, I think this week, and I was looking at something the other day. They've hired 5 of my people in the last year, but I'm an incubator for labor. I'm designed for that, right? I mean,
that's a success for you.
Well, what I want to do is, unless people want experienced people, the only way to give them experience is you have to be a big shop like you that can absorb the cost to train them on the job, knowing they have no experience before you put them into something. But if you're owners reps like us that are doing construction management, project engineering, and then safety, you have to hire them. And we have to absorb all that risk and put them on a program, and then get them a CDCP or get them something that gets them to the point where now they quote unquote have enough experience that when people that we engage with are like, they must have experience. And I'm like, I have someone that has some. Yeah. Right. But they have 6 months to a year at a minimum of learning the language, being in the industry. But if I do the incubator myself, I could move them and replug them into anything. They never leave us.
Sure.
Veterans have a high look. I mean, I'll tell you, veterans are great. The best part is you'll never hear them say that's not their job, and they have been trained on the most advanced shit on earth. Right. The worst part about a veteran is you'll never hear them say that's not their job. So they'll
burn out. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing is they sometimes have to be. They didn't join the military to make money. They did it to make a difference. Right. All right. So if they're not significant or doing something that's contributing to something bigger than themselves, then their passion spikes. And as executives like we are, we measure the output and productivity of our teams. And we have to make sure that we're doing things to increase that. And it turns out making them happy with what they're doing or feeling safe, fulfilled, and those things allows them to have a higher level of output productivity that's more transparent and predictable for us in leadership to go understand how we could commit ourselves to these bigger programs, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have veterans that are like, look, if I'm not a part of the bigger picture, then this sucks. Yeah. Does that make sense? So there are pros and cons. So I have to figure out, like, I don't want to help veterans get jobs and then their first year out of the military. Think about it, man. I mean, when I first got out of the military, I probably had 3 jobs in the first 4 years.
That's what I've heard is 3 jobs out of the military until you figure out what you really want to do and get to figure it out.
So imagine if I'm a technology incubator for labor, and they could go have a job working for 3 of my different clients that are each completely different. They get those 3 jobs while never leaving me, but now they have experience and I could give them to someone else, because our job is to put people into the field. Our job is to build leaders. that could go out and help build teams, and those teams could go build data centers. So we have to be working together. Most of the GCs are so big that they're not as agile and versatile when it comes to reinventing themselves around the dynamics of labor. But Gen Z is a whole new monster.
It is, for sure.
And the way that we hired millennials is different than they hired Gen X like me, right? So like we have to evolve, and I don't know what that silver bullet looks like yet, right? That's what this platform is for, is to vet out labor.
I think people like you are really helping us as an industry to figure out the best way to train people and find resources, specifically the military and like you said, first responders. I think that's fantastic. And to be able to like continue their learning, their progress. I mean, I think it's huge. I would say like your badge of honor is like how many people you've gotten hired, as much as it hurts you. Yeah. But like that's a huge, I would say a gold star for you is how many people
our job is to hire them, train them, and then let them loose in the industry.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And hopefully they can contribute to something greater than themselves, right? And you have to remember these people that we're hiring, we just have to pay a proportion of their value. They're not going out and commoditizing themselves like there's a lot of experienced people in this industry that are quote unquote experienced because they've been in it for 4 or 5 years and they still haven't seen the ball since kickoff. But because they've been in the game for long, they're like, I need $250,000 to show up to be a PM. And you're like, all right, so we drug test here and crack is against our policy, right?
And you're on it, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, look, this industry is interesting, but there's a correction coming on labor. But there's also, now that we've had an election, I think that there's going to be, we'll see. If the economy stabilizes more going into the first quarter and you see a de-escalation of tension between us and China or some wars in Ukraine and Israel going away, I think that you can begin to see the baby boomers continuing to retire. And a lot of them were the pioneers that have been in this industry for more than 20 years and helped pioneer it. Right. So we're going to have the silver tsunami and all the blue hairs leaving. We're going to need to rely on these Gen Zers to help come in and use. They're digital pioneers. They were born with all the technology that we build. That they were born with it in their hands. Right. Yeah. So we need to leverage them to help us figure out how we're going to solve for this problem, right? So we're at a really interesting time in this industry. Don't you agree?
No, 100%. I think that it can go a lot of different ways. And I think it's a matter of how we keep people interested in construction as a whole, and know that we're doing cutting edge stuff, which I think is one of the cooler things about being in the data center side of things, or microelectronics for that matter, is like this cool technology that is changing. Like, no offense to my commercial builder friends, but like a hotel's a hotel.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think it's really neat, some of the technologies that we're trying to try out and do on some of these projects.
I think at some point what you're going to see, and we're going to bring this one home with a couple questions here, but I think what you'll eventually see is they'll get back to building commercial, but let me tell you how. It's not going to be because they're building commercial just to build commercial. You're going to see us building 2,000-acre campuses that are urban technology centers that will have thousands of people there, not just throughout the duration of delivery of the product, but in the operation of the adjacent. And there'll be businesses within an ecosystem sitting within that campus. And those people, they're going to need a place to live. So they're going to be putting lodging. Like at some point, Overwatch will not just provide labor. We will provide the labor and the housing that goes with that labor. Just like if you look at the coal miners, the coal mines own the coal mine plus the homes and the shopping centers and everything around it. Yeah. Because at some point everything will be focused more towards blue collar, and we're going to be building such a massive volume of this stuff that we're going to need skilled trades and craftsmen with the ability to perform labors to deliver the volume and velocity that we need to support the adoption rate of emerging technology.
That's right. Yeah.
And with that, it's not going to be good enough for a business like mine to supply you with talent. That talent is the existential threat today. Power's right there behind it. Yep. But being able to house those people. I mean, look, looking at a hotel to buy right now in a market just to support 20, 30 people that are going to be there for the next 3 years.
Sure.
You're right. I mean, I started with buying Airbnbs and then using those for, my team. So then at hotels, now I have to buy something bigger than that because that's where we're scaling to the point where you guys aren't going to be tasked just to go build a data center. You're going to have to build
man camps,
the hotel that goes with it.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's how you get back into the commercial side. But that's where the industry's going. But let me ask you a question to bring this one home because I know I threw a lot of shit at you today.
That's all right. You're good. It is fun.
Andy, what do you tell people you do for a living?
So it's easy for me because it's a cool tagline that we have is build great things. And so for me, it's, I like to mentor people. And that's when people say, like, what do you do for them? I'm like, yeah, I'm in construction. And they're like, I don't see you. You don't look like you do a lot of construction. I'm like,
build libraries?
Yeah, exactly. And I say, I build data centers. And they're like, oh, really? Like, what is that? Oh, I thought everything was going to the cloud. And you're like, yeah, that's exactly where it's going. And we build in the cloud. But I talk to them about how I grow people and build people that help build those things and help grow people to become better versions of themselves in the future. And that's what really inspires me.
Did you learn that at DPR? Where did you learn that at?
It helped, I guess, early on, honestly, at the Naval Academy and through the military, but honed it here probably at DPR's really does a good job of trying to train their leaders.
Sure. I've been doing work with them for at least a dozen years, and I've always seen that they have a really strong investment in those that lead their teams in the field. So, and there's a lot of incredibly talented people that have even left DPR that go and work on the end user side.
That's right.
That have made major, leaps and bounds and changes for this industry. So it's a respectable shop. And I think that my last question for you would be, what do you want anybody else to know about DPR that you haven't had the opportunity to say yet?
Yeah, I think for us is that we're a contractor that really cares about its people, and that we try to utilize our self-perform as a way to make us be more reliable, safety, and I think that we're out there to try to help people as a whole. We care about people, and that's what really, to your point, you said earlier, it's like you could have all the money in the world and all the power, but if you don't have the people, you're not going to be building.
You have the greatest design on earth, but without the right
right.
team to bring it to life, it's nothing.
That's right.
Well, listen, man, this has been fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's been a real pleasure to sit down with you, Andy. And I appreciate you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Kirk. Appreciate you
Thank
too.
you for what you're doing to help grow the industry. It's
Absolutely.
awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.